Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Belle again, and welcome to The Roads with Belle. Today is December 8th, 2024, and this is episode 68 of The Roads Not Taken, which is a weekly series where we go over the news that was unreported, underreported, didn't get the coverage we felt that it should, or we just found it interesting. And then we go over some questions from y'all. Today is December 8th, and today is National Blue Collar Worker Day and International Pretend to be a Time Traveler Day. And on this date in 1980, John Lennon was shot. And starting with foreign policy, South Korea's president has apologized for that pesky little martial law thing. He's facing impeachment and is being investigated for insurrection. I really wish I could load that Back to the Future meme. Hey, we've seen this one. U.S. lawmakers are upset about the latest moves to restrict China's access to high-tech chips. They think the moves didn't go far enough. It seems like we're not getting out of this without a trade war. At the time I was pulling this information, a ruble is officially worth a penny. That's actually good news for Putin. It was worth less than a penny earlier this week. Putin was able to get the value back up after changing the rules about how Russian gas payments are received. Since 2022, he's demanded that payments be made in rubles. Now, they can be made, quote, in another way agreed upon by the Russian supplier with the foreign buyer. Rebels in Syria are making sweeping advances and are posing a real threat to Assad's rule there. Iran has reportedly pulled some of its officials from the country. Expect this to get dicey. In U.S. news, it's being reported that Elon Musk spent more than $250 million to get Trump in the White House. The search for the suspect in the United Health CEO case has expanded beyond New York. Trump has indicated he thinks his pick for Secretary of Defense can get the votes. A crucial test will occur next week when he meets with Senator Ernst. She is so far unconvinced. U.S. consumer sentiment hit a 7-month high. That goes to show you how much vibes impact the economy. Inflation is being stubborn, and most expected to go back up with the new administration's policies. A Boston city councilor was arrested on federal corruption charges and has entered a not guilty plea over allegations of what looks like a kickback scheme. New York City's mayor is reportedly not ruling out changing parties and becoming a Republican. In cultural news, the U.S. Naval Academy can still consider race in admissions, according to a new federal ruling. In science news, North American ice-aged people engaged in lots of hunting, not so much gathering, according to a new study. It seems like woolly mammoth was the main course of the time. The USDA has mandated bird flu testing in milk across the U.S. In oddities, a man in Ontario is reportedly recovering in a hospital after leaping on the back of a polar bear to protect his wife. On to the Q&A. I wonder if you think that a grassroots effort to reform the Republican Party is possible right now during a Trump presidency. I'm thinking about down-ballot races in red areas. I don't mean running moderate or traditional Republicans, but rather try running working-class reform candidates that really want to do good for their districts, rather than having loyalty to Trump. People who want to see government work for everyone, not just the rich and well-connected. Such candidates might not be able to run against Trump directly, but it might be possible to win a primary on a positive message without attracting the attention of party leadership. Run on family values, the Constitution, jobs, security, etc. But do it with good intentions. There could be a real counterpoint to the squad in the Republican Party. You often say the midterms are key. Maybe one of the keys would be a movement to challenge the Freedom Caucus on their own ground. Folks who identify as Republican so they can get a foot in the door, but who go to the state capitol or to D.C. to serve, not to rule. Are there any good Republicans left? Do you know of anyone trying to reform the party? Whether that would work or not honestly depends on the state of the economy at the midterms. If it defies expectation and is still cruising along on Biden's recovery path, it probably won't matter. If Trump's policies derail the economy, then it's possible that those identifying as working class Republicans have a shot. The real problem is that people would have to start positioning themselves now. And many might think it's too much of a risk when it comes to not knowing when the economy will take a different turn. I'm wondering something about the tariffs. Are there states that are going to be more or less affected? I know that each state contributes to the whole of the U.S. economy, but also I think it sometimes helps to view each state's economy as its own. Not in a vacuum, of course, but just as its own individual state. Is there any state that will get hit softly, or which states will get hit hardest? This was a really cool question. A few of us talked about this. This was interesting. So, yes, I think the easiest way to do this would be to look at what percentage of a state's GDP is imports. About 13% of the U.S. GDP is imports. So, if the state has substantially higher than that, it will be hit hard. Those that are substantially lower will feel the impacts the least, at least in theory. So, as an example, only 2% of South Dakota's GDP is imports. They won't feel it as much as Kentucky, which is 27%. So, a quick glance says Mississippi, Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, and Tennessee will be hit the hardest. Yep, all states that went to Trump. Hello, longtime listener, first-time caller. To whoever cares about logistics and or scenarios of distant future. Now that droughts and invading Canada have been brought up again, I guess it's almost a good time to ask this. Forever ago, last January or so, Bo talked about war over water. It's a concept that's occasionally mentioned over here at the other side of the Atlantic in casual discussions about the future in when oil runs out, they'll invade us for water kind of way. But it never occurred to me that obviously the U.S. would go to Canada first. Anyway, the question, for the sake of simplicity, let's assume it's instant victory for the invader with no post-war resistance. How is the logistics of water supposed to work even in this ideal scenario? How is the invading country supposed to actually transport the massive amounts of required water back to their own land? Would it be easier to build massive desalination facilities despite the heavy energy requirements? So, this is one of those thought exercises that gets brought up. For the record, I'm in a group that believes there's far easier ways to deal with this issue. But the logistics of moving water is the same as moving oil, and we do that all the time. So, that looks like it. A little more information and a little more context, and having the right information will make all the difference. Y'all have a good day.